bring back Yearning. I see that comment literally every single day on every bookish platform, and I agree with the sentiment. We used to have so many books with just the most intense yearning and desire and just like tension between the love interests. We don't have that as much anymore for several reasons. One, I think back in the day in the 2010s, really the most popular books were YA, and the lack of spice made the tension and yearning just like times 10. And I love a good spice scene, don't get me wrong, but I feel like sometimes it's just like too much spice or just like insta love, the point where you don't really have enough character development to make their love believable, and so you don't have as much yearning and just like the purity of like love instead of just lust, if that makes sense. I don't know, could be wrong. Let me know in the comments why you think we've kind of lost a lot of books with yearning, but I'm going to give you some of my favorites. This video is inspired by a video that I made on Book Talk. The song Would You Fall in Love With Me Again from Epic the Musical, literally love that musical so much, was trending on TikTok, so I made a video kind of sharing book recommendations that fit that vibe. And as I was looking at that video, I was like, what do all of these books have in common? And I really found that like all the books that I recommended in that video did have that sense of just like absolutely yearning for the other person. Yearning is a feeling of intense longing for something or someone. So yearning. Let's get into it. Intense desire, intense longing. And that is what all of these books have. The book that really inspired this entire video is one that I just recently read by Rebecca Ross, and it is River Enchanted. This is a Scottish folklore, I would say romance fantasy. It has a beautiful world. I actually was reading this book for a month because you guys know it takes me longer to get through a book if I'm actually really enjoying it, because I just want to like sit in that world literally forever. And this world was just done beautifully. This book centers around the Scottish Isle of Cadence, which is off of the mainland in this world. It's divided into two parts, the east and the west, and they hate each other. Jack, who was on the mainland studying music, returns home, and there are girls being stolen from their homes in the middle of the night on his side of the island. And so it's really just kind of like a mystery that he solves with his former nemesis, like childhood nemesis, to figure out what's going on. I would say the main love story in that one isn't even my favorite one. You guys will know what I'm talking about whenever you read this, or if you have read this, you'll know what I mean. As I was reading this, the song Would You Fall in Love With Me Again was trending on TikTok, and I was like, that is literally this book. Like, Rebecca Ross just has this beautiful, wonderful talent of making you feel the feelings of falling in love, and not in like a tense way, more of like a tender way. This is a YA, it's spice free, it's absolutely gorgeous. If you've read Divine Rivals, it kind of is similar to that, where it's kind of like a closed door scene for both of them. I just love this story so much. I can't wait to read Fire Endless. I haven't read book 2. This is a duology, so I haven't read book 2, but absolutely love, highly recommend. If you guys have been on my channel literally at all, you already know that I'm going to recommend Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. I always describe this as similar vibes to Throne of Glass, but way lower stakes. And I would say in this one, the love does come quicker, but between the two books, Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves, you do kind of have like, it's like enemies to lovers, not to give too much away. But even though love does come soon, there are obstacles that present themselves. Kazi is a part of the Queen of the Continent's militia, and she goes to investigate the first people, as they call themselves. The king of their territory just passed away and his son is taking over. Kazi runs into him with her militia in the street. They kind of go off separately, and they end up getting kidnapped and taken by traffickers. They end up escaping, but they're chained to each other and they're in the wilderness, so they have to make their way back to his territory to reunite with her militia and his people. So it is just very tense. The tension in this book is just so good, and I think that the pacing is phenomenally done as well. Again, the love does come a bit quicker. Normally I say if I'm reading a book, I want it to be so slow burn that like the enemies don't even kiss until like end of book 2. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but that's like what I mean. I love slow burn. I love enemies to lovers. Just trust me on this one, guys. Like, just literally give it a shot. Trust me. And come back to me once you finish both the books. I have to throw Song of Achilles in here because I feel like the longing in this book, I I'm literally like I'm gonna blush just even thinking about this love story. I was reading this while I was in Greece, as I've said. This is based on the Greek mythology stories of Achilles and Patroclus. Literally, like, it's so heart-wrenching, but it's so beautiful, so good. LGBTQ representation. I could, like, honestly, I want to read this again. I was reading this like on the beach in Mykonos whenever I finished it, and I was sobbing my eyes out. Literally, I was just staring off into the Aegean Sea, like sobbing my eyes out to this book, and like that's a core memory for me. So I hope that you guys like this as much as I did. I actually would recommend this in the summer. I feel like a lot of parts of this are very like summery. It doesn't really matter when you read this, like it's gonna be the same effect either way, I think, but it's just so beautiful, and the longing is insane in this book. When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. Now this is gonna take a little bit longer to get to the part of the yearning. I feel like this book has phenomenal world building, and that's one of my favorite things about it. I think some books are more romance than fantasy, some are more fantasy than romance. This definitely, I think, has a bit more fantasy than romance, still a romantasy in my mind. And you will get to the part that I'm talking about with the yearning and the waiting for each other. I think I gave this 4.5 stars. Again, if you don't like, you know, payoff, I think this is like 700 pages or something. So if that's not your thing, totally understandable. This one does have spice, so also keep that in mind. Rave is an assassin who ends up getting captured by the Guild of Nobles. They put her into a dangerous arena in order to make a political statement, and she gets saved by Khan. And I can't really go too much into it. This world is really cool. I really like the dragons. I really like the magic system. Again, very unique. It is long. It's a series. It's not complete, and there is spice, so keep that in mind. But the longing and the yearning in this is very, very good. I cannot talk about yearning without talking about Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I don't have the sleeve, so that's why I always have to turn it first to be like, it is Divine Rivals. This story means so much to me. You guys know I got a tattoo of it, and that's the only bookish tattoo I currently have so far. It follows two rival journalists who are in this world where there's a war between gods. Iris's brother went off to war. She is working as an intern trying to get this position, and her competition is Roman. They're rivals at work, but in her spare time she is writing letters to her brother, and she found out that if she puts the letters under the wardrobe, they end up getting sent away, and so she thinks that she's writing them to her brother, but she's actually writing them to Roman, who has the matching typewriter, but she doesn't know that it's him. This book, guys, I literally, like, I'm gonna have to like scream this till the day I die. I'm gonna be like 90 years old recommending this book. But if you haven't read this yet and you want to know a book with yearning, it's right here. This is YA, so there's no spice, and you just literally need to pick up Divine Rivals once in your life. Please read it. If you're gonna do anything for me, read Divine Rivals. I make every single one of the people closest to me read Divine Rivals. One Dark Window is like your classic romantasy, but it's a type of romantasy that has such a great magic system and world building that it almost feels equally balanced, but I would say that there's more love than there is fantasy. There's 2 books in this series, and it is a completed duology. This is the Shepherd King duology. In this world, the magic system works in kind of like a deck of cards. If you have a card, you have the power of that card. So if you have like a beauty card, then it makes you beautiful. If you have a mind control card, then you can control minds. All of the magic comes at a cost, but if you have that card, you get the magic of that card. Elspeth at a young age touches a nightmare card, so she has a nightmare living inside of her head. There's also a curse across the whole land, and so she is trying to find a way to break this curse. This is literally one of my favorite duologies of all time. Can't say enough good things about it, and the second one is actually my favorite, and I would say the second one is the one where I was really like, oh, there's yearning in here. I can't make this video without talking about A Court of Mist and Fury, and I think that the reason why is because as I'm writing my own romantasy, I'm realizing that ACOTAR really was the blueprint for a lot of like spicy romantasies. A Court of Mist and Fury, which is the second book in the ACOTAR series, does the best job of enemies to lovers, yearning, and like build up and payoff in a romantasy, and I think a lot of books really mirror what ACOTAR did. Specifically in this book, like I would say that this book is the one that has the most yearning out of every book that she's done so far. Since this is a second book, I can't really give too much away. ACOTAR in general follows Feyre, who is a human girl in the human realm who ends up sacrificing herself to save her family and going over into the Fey realm. Everything else that happens is like a wild ride afterwards. Like this book is not what the first book was, you know what I mean? So it's hard to explain this book without just giving it all away. But all you need to know is like this is just like one of the best yearning and payoffs for enemies to lovers that I have personally ever read, and so I couldn't make this video without including it. Even though, you know, love it or hate it, it really was the blueprint for a lot of things. The people that like ACOTAR are people who like more romance over fantasy, even though I do still like the fantasy world. Last but not least, if you want enemies to lovers and you want the feeling of yearning, but you don't want it to be a romance-centered story, Cruel Prince is literally my baby. I love this series so much. I think what a lot of people have a problem with Cruel Prince is that on Book Talk it was really heavily marketed as a romance, and I feel like that is kind of where it goes wrong, because this is primarily a fantasy. It's a fantasy trilogy. It is YA, and it is very heavily bully enemies to lovers. It's not like a book where it's like, oh, he kind of doesn't like me. Like, no, they hate each other. So if you don't like that, then I probably wouldn't recommend this book. But if you do like more fantasy, you do like more plot, and then you like a subplot of romance with that trope, I would highly recommend reading Cruel Prince. Jude is adopted into the fairy realm with her twin sister, Taryn, and her half-sister, who is half fae, Vivian. Pretty much we're just kind of following along the journey. I feel like the world building in this is like so whimsical, and this is exactly what I like to read whenever I'm reading a fantasy book. I feel like I don't recommend this like that often. It is very misrepresented on Book Talk a lot, but if you do like all of those things, I would highly recommend Cruel Prince. And I had to add it in here because if you guys know, you know, like the yearning in this is insane because they do hate each other so much and they don't want to want each other. It's so good. I hope you guys liked all these recs. Let me know if you have any. Seriously, let me know if you have any other than those, because I need so many more books like that. And I feel like, again, it's just hard to come by nowadays. I feel like there aren't a ton of books like that. As I'm writing my own fantasy romance, I'm constantly taking note when books have that in there and kind of what elements it takes to make you so attached to these two people and like rooting for them so bad to get together because they're just like longing for each other so much. Follow me on Bookstagram if you guys aren't already. I'm making the transition almost completely over to Bookstagram instead of Book Talk, which is literally so sad. I do love my Bookstagram though. I have a lot of fun on there, so definitely go follow me on there. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.